Red Redondo and the Devil's Posse. Introduction: a town under siege. Red Redondo had seen plenty of outlaw gangs in his time, but the Devil's Posse was something else entirely. They weren't just bandits. They were cutthroats, killers, and madmen, leaving nothing but ashes in their wake. Word was they had taken over the town of Prospector's Hollow, running it like their own personal kingdom. The law was dead, the townsfolk were prisoners, and anyone who resisted wound up swinging from the gallows. Red wasn't looking for trouble. But when he saw a boy, barely 10 years old, lying in the dust with a bullet wound in his leg, he knew trouble had found him. "Who did this?" Red asked, kneeling beside him. The boy's lips trembled. "The Devil's Posse." Red's grip tightened on his revolver. Then he stood up, looked toward the town, and started walking. The story. Prospector's Hollow was a ghost town in all but name. Red rode through the empty streets, past shattered windows and abandoned storefronts. Vultures circled overhead, waiting for their next meal. Then he saw them. 6 men in black dusters lounged outside the saloon, rifles propped against barrels, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. At the center of them sat Silas Graves, leader of the Devil's Posse. He was tall, with hollow eyes and a cruel grin. A man who had sent more people to the grave than he had fingers to count them. Red dismounted, walking straight toward him. The outlaws tensed. Graves didn't. "Look what we got here, boys," Graves drawled. "Another dead man walking." Red stopped a few feet away. "You the ones who shot that boy outside town?" Graves took a slow sip of whiskey. "Might be. What's it to you?" Red's fingers hovered over his gun. "That's a mighty big mistake." Graves chuckled. "You got guts, stranger. I'll give you that." Then his smile vanished. "But if you so much as flinch, we're gonna put you in the ground." The standoff. The street went dead silent. The outlaws shifted, hands drifting toward their guns. Red stood as still as a shadow, waiting. Graves smirked. "Last chance to walk away, cowboy." Red's eyes were cold. "You don't want me to stay?" Graves leaned forward. "Ain't nobody ever wanted you less." Red grinned. "Then I guess I'll stay." Then he moved. The gunfight. Blam. Red's gun cleared leather before anyone else could react. Boom. The first outlaw dropped before he even drew. Crack. Red pivoted and shot another through the chest. The remaining men scattered, diving behind barrels and wagons, opening fire. Bang. 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 Bullets kicked up dust around Red's boots as he ducked and rolled, returning fire. An outlaw popped up from behind a crate. Red put a bullet between his eyes. Another rushed at him with a knife. Red sidestepped and shot him in the gut. Now only Silas Graves remained. The leader of the Devil's Posse staggered back, realizing he was alone. His smile was gone. Red leveled his Colt. "This is where you run," Red said. Graves' jaw clenched. "You think you're some kind of hero?" Red's eyes didn't waver. "I think I'm still breathing." "You won't be for long." Graves hesitated, then turned and ran. Red didn't chase him. He holstered his gun, watching as Graves disappeared into the desert. The town was free. But Red knew the fight wasn't over. Not yet. The ride for revenge. Red didn't waste time. He knew Graves would be back, with more men. So he rode out into the desert that night, following the outlaws' trail to an abandoned mine on the edge of the Badlands. It was their hideout, all right. Campfires burned, casting long shadows over the rocky terrain. Red counted 15 men. He had 6 bullets. He'd have to make them count. The assault on Devil's Hollow. Red moved like a ghost, creeping through the brush until he reached the first guard. Crack. He snapped the man's neck before he could shout. He stole a rifle from the dead man's hands, took position on a rocky ledge, and lined up his first shot. Boom. A sentry collapsed, clutching his throat. The outlaws panicked. Red opened fire. Bang. 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 Men dropped one after another, caught in the chaos. Then came the voice. Redondo. Silas Graves stood at the mouth of the mine, rifle in hand. You should have stayed in your grave, Red. Graves snarled. Red smirked. I ain't in it yet. Then he charged straight at him. The final duel. Graves fired first, Red rolled aside. Boom. Red's bullet grazed Graves' shoulder, making him stumble. The outlaw snarled, throwing down his rifle and drawing his pistol. They circled each other, both knowing only one would walk away. Graves drew. But Red was faster. Blam. Graves froze. Blood bloomed across his chest. His gun fell from his fingers. Then he dropped to his knees. Red stepped forward, looking down at him. Guess you got your wish, Red said. Ain't nobody gonna want you now. Graves tried to speak, then collapsed, dead. It was over. Epilogue, a town reborn. By dawn, Prospector's Hollow was free. The Devil's Posse was dead or scattered, and the townspeople were already coming out of hiding. A man stepped forward, the town's mayor, shaking with emotion. You saved us, he whispered. Red shook his head. I just put down some rabid dogs. The mayor swallowed. At least let us reward you. But Red was already walking to his horse. I don't stick around, he said. Too much road left to ride. He tipped his hat, then spurred his horse forward. The wind carried whispers of his name through the streets. Red Redondo. A man of justice. A rider of the West. And he was already on to the next town in need.